Democrats raised $346 million from 4.7 million people, claiming to not have an employer. When people make donations, they are legally required to list their employer, and this is raising red flags. Donald Trump himself has tweeted out that this may be money laundering, and some are suggesting this could be foreign sources donating to the Democrats. Actblue, which is a progressive fundraising organization for liberal causes, and the Democrats say, no, these are just retirees and, stay-at-home parents and things like that. But it does seem kind of strange that 4.7 million unemployed people would be able to muster up about $74 per person in donations to the Democrats. I guess unemployed people can find $74, and maybe there are a lot of retirees. But nonetheless, this is starting to look like a serious scandal, especially when you compare it to the Republicans. The Republicans use a fundraising service called WinRed, and they do not have nearly as much unemployed people making these donations. The numbers don't seem to add up. Now, this story is interesting. It's coming off of another story from a few months ago about Black Lives Matter. People were saying that the donations going to Black Lives Matter actually went to the DNC. Now, that's not true. It goes through a company called Actblue. And it's really interesting how they try to debunk the narrative, claiming that it would be illegal for the Black Lives Matter organization, or the organization that represents them, called Thousand Currents. It would be illegal for Thousand Currents to give money to the DNC. But that's not what is being alleged. I want to revisit that story in the context of what's happening here. And I think, well, I can't make any definitive claims, but it looks like we do have a very, very strange money potential scandal. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe they're right. Maybe just every single retiree, they just dumped all that money in. But I got another question there. Aren't older people, don't they tend to be Republicans? And if that's the case, shouldn't the Republicans see more than the Democrats when coming from unemployed individuals? To me, this smells very, very strange. And you know what? Fox News actually brings up another point. Something similar back in the 2008 cycle, when Obama was, according to the Washington Post, using untraceable prepaid credit cards for fundraising, which many people thought could allow foreign sources or individuals to donate more than they're legally allowed to. Let's jump right into this story and actually see what is going on. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There are many ways you can give. I got a P.O. box if you want to send me stuff. But the best thing you can do is share this story. I don't have a big marketing department, not like CNN or MSNBC. I rely on word of mouth. If you think I'm doing a really good job, but more importantly, if you think people need to know about this, then please share this video. It's the most powerful thing you can do to help support my work and, more importantly, get the message out. Also, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, the notification bell. Let's read the story, and then we'll dig into the context. Exclusive. Data shows that half of 2019 donations to Actblue came from untraceable unemployed donors. A Take Back Action Fund analysis of $400 million in donations to liberal causes raises red flags of possible foreign involvement. Fox News reports, less than 2 months ahead of the presidential election, with concerns of foreign interference again at the forefront, a conservative political group is raising serious concerns about millions of donations reported by a major Democratic fundraising platform. A preliminary computer analysis by the Take Back Action Fund, obtained exclusively by Fox News, has found that nearly half of all 2019 donations to Actblue were made by people claiming to be unemployed. Now, I want to stop right there. It says no employer/unemployed. It could be that just for some reason, only Democrats don't understand the concept of, sole proprietorship, and they're not listing themselves as their employer if they're working jobs, or maybe they're working for themselves. Perhaps. It doesn't add up when you look at the WinRed numbers, though. Something isn't right. They say, Action Fund President John Putner questioned the veracity of those donations and called it a loophole that must be closed for the sake of election integrity. Quote, after downloading hundreds of millions of dollars in donations to the Take Back Action Fund servers, we were shocked to see that almost half of the donations to Actblue in 2019 claimed to be unemployed individuals, he said. The name of employers must be disclosed when making political donations. But more than $4.7 million, more than 4.7 million donations came from people who claimed they did not have an employer. Those 4.7 million donations totaled $346 million Actblue raised and sent to liberal causes. Now, I got another question here. If I'm donating to Black Lives Matter, do I need to disclose my employer? The organization that fundraises on behalf of the Black Lives Matter Global Network is Thousand Currents. I believe they are a 501c3. I don't know if there's the same legal requirements. So if someone is giving money through Actblue to a politician, that's different than if they're giving money to, say, Black Lives Matter. Let's read on. They say the trend is continuing this year. An Action Fund examination of 2020 data from January through August showed an uptick in unemployed donations through Actblue to 50.1% this year. This is ridiculous. Actblue defends the integrity of its donations and said many come from retirees and people who aren't counted as employed, such as homemakers. According to the findings of the Action Fund, a nonprofit that aims to educate the public on conservative solutions for political reform, 48.4% of Actblue donations last year, prior to the massive loss of jobs that came with the onslaught of the coronavirus pandemic, came from those who did not list an employer or who claimed to be unemployed. Pudner said the large number is a red flag that some donations may be illicit contributions from foreign interests attempting to impact U.S. elections. Quote, "It is hard to believe that at a time when the U.S. unemployment rate was less than 4%, that unemployed people had $346 million to send to Actblue for liberal causes," Pudner said, adding that $4.7 million in donations from people without a job raised serious concerns. Now, listen, if people are donating to charities, 501c3s, maybe, I'm not sure if they do or don't, but I don't think they need to list their employer necessarily. The bigger question then is, I mean, that's still $74 per person. And somebody who's retired, they're on a budget. I used to work in nonprofit fundraising. This is why this is a big, big red flag for me. I fundraised for Greenpeace, for Save the Children, for even the ACLU. Now I worked for companies that were fundraising for them. That's a very important distinction. I think Greenpeace was literally one of Greenpeace's organizations. And I've also worked for a homeless shelter. I was literally in charge of fundraising. And I can tell you this, one of the biggest challenges is convincing retirees to make any contribution. The average person would make a monthly contribution of around, I believe it's $17 at the time. So this was a while ago. This was like 14 years ago. It was around $17 at the time, probably up around 20 or bucks or so now. But with the pandemic and the loss of jobs, I'd imagine it's a little low. Convincing someone to give $74, that seems bold to me. Maybe these are people who are giving monthly, but they would specifically train people. When you're trying to convince someone to donate, if they're a retiree, you have to say this because retirees don't make these donations, especially homemakers. These are people who are on a budget they can't control. So people who are homemakers might have extra cash, but for the most part would say, I got to talk to my wife. I got to talk to my husband. That was another huge hurdle. I can't do it. I'm on a budget. I've got to talk to my significant other, or I'm retired. I can't afford this. This to me, I saw this and I said, no way. No way. I was a director. I worked in nonprofits. This to me sounds totally bunk. Let's read more. Check this out. They say, Actblue, created in 2004, and I gotta stop. I'm sorry, man. The other huge thing people would always tell us, I'm unemployed. I can't give you money. I saw this and I said, no way. I used to go out, me and my friends, we worked for these nonprofits and we would do the street canvassing like, hey, you got a minute? And I tell you this, the three big excuses: I don't have a job. I can't afford it. I got to talk to my significant other. I'm just a homemaker, or we're on a budget together. And the retirees, we're on a budget. I'm calling BS on this. Let's read more. Actblue, created in 2004, bills itself as a powerful online fundraising platform available to Democratic candidates and committees, progressive organizations, and nonprofits that share our values for no cost besides a 3.95% processing fee on donations. And we operate as a conduit, which means donations made through Actblue to a campaign or organization are considered individual donations, its website explains. But critics, including the Action Fund, contend that the website allows credit card donations that are not verified. So anyone from any country in the world can donate without a paper trail. Actblue's insistence on refusing to allow banks to verify their donations is an invitation to foreign programmers or others to send money through them using fake American names. And we encourage them to start letting banks verify the identity of donors to stop the potential for millions of dollars to influence our election, Putner said. I just got to say it, man. It just looks like cheating. It just looks like cheating. Everything from mail-in voting to this. I mean, why wouldn't they allow the banks to verify the identity of the card holders? I do think this can be investigated, and I think it should be investigated. And while you're at it, investigate WinRed. They seem to have nothing to hide. But anybody playing dirty games, try and steal an election, call them out. Here's a quote. Actblue's insistence on refusing to allow banks to I'm sorry, I read that part. Last year, the Republican Party created a competing fundraising platform called WinRed to counter Actblue's prowess in small donor sourcing. According to the Action Fund, an analysis of WinRed's 4.9 million donations totaling 302 million found that only 4% came from people who did not list an employer or were unemployed. This year, the rate is 5.6, according to the data. Check this out. Joe Biden, no employer unemployed, 55 million. Trump, 2.3 million. 2.8% of Trump's donors were unemployed. 33.7% of Biden's donations are unemployed. Now, you may be saying, yes, maybe the people who lost their jobs are mad at Trump over COVID. Fair point. I'll accept it. What I won't accept, $55 million. Come on, man. Is that, I believe that's, $55 million. Donation. I don't buy it, man. I'm sorry. I just don't. 40. What is this? Oh, okay. So these are the broken down by year. It appears. I don't know. I think the whole thing is fishy. I think I'm reading the chart right. I may be reading it wrong, but suffice it to say, they say the percentage of people that Biden received that were unemployed is 33.7. Oh, I'm sorry, 49.6. I can't tell what they're trying to say in this. Total raised. Whatever. Let's read more. We purposefully wanted to examine 2019 first because before COVID, the unemployment rate was at 4% or below. It's hard to believe that millions of Americans who were out of work had $346 million to spare to give to Actblue. Yep, for liberal causes, he says. Precisely determining if the donations were authentic and genuinely from those who were unemployed requires further time and resources. Auditing these suspect donations to determine if millions lied by indicating they were unemployed when in fact they were not, or if their names were just being used by a foreign programmer or someone else to move money without their knowledge will take time, Putner said. We've planned a series of forensic procedures to identify whether or not these donors of record exist or not, if they made the contributions themselves, and whether they were legally able, and whether or not they are potential straw donors, making the contributions after being given the money and direction by someone else. In response to questions by Fox News, a representative for Actblue said it is best security practice to refrain from publicly sharing any detailed information about how we analyze contributions. But we use an array of data sources, internal validation and third-party services to verify the validity of transactions. We take the security of our platform and integrity of donations very seriously. We report every contribution to federal candidates that come through our platform, and you can look those up on the FEC. We report the information donors enter about their occupation and employer, and we do see a significant portion of donors who report their status as not employed, such as retired donors or full-time parents. The issue of unauthenticated political donations was also brought to light by the Washington Post in 2008, which was at the time allowing donors to use largely untraceable prepaid credit cards that would potentially be used to evade limits on how much an individual is legally allowed to give to mask their contribution. Check this out. This is an old story from the Washington Post. Obama accepting untraceable donations. They say Senator Barack Obama's presidential campaign is allowing donors to use largely untraceable prepaid credit cards that could potentially be used to evade limits on how much an individual is legally allowed to give or to mask a contributor's identity, campaign officials confirm. So this is just on top. It's crazy on top of crazy. All right. Suffice it to say that the Democrats are getting a ridiculous proportion, a ridiculous amount of money and donors who are not employed or who have no employer. Now, they say very easily, it could just be people who don't know. It could be people who aren't listing things properly. They don't realize they have to actually say who their employer is, so maybe they're just not that smart. But I got to say, if in any circumstance where that was the case, wouldn't it make more sense that Republicans would see the same thing? They don't. They aren't seeing it. Well, Donald Trump has called this out. He says fake liberal Democrat donors money laundering anyone. I don't know for sure, but I do want to point out two very important aspects of this. Yes, if Actblue is giving money to Joe Biden or anyone else, they got to report all of this. But I have some concerns. How many people are inactive politically? Is anyone going to look up maybe tens of thousands of individuals who have maybe given donations and it was falsely put in their name? I think about this when we talk about mail-in voting. If there are duplicate ballots being sent out in different states, like somebody could have lived in California and registered, and then a year later moved and registered somewhere else, and now both ballots get sent out. What if someone forges it, sends it in? It's hard to know for sure. There should be, I believe there are some ways we can track your actual vote, but I'm curious about the donations. If there's somebody who doesn't care about politics, and they know this person doesn't care about politics, what if someone of Russian influence, yeah, I'm using Russia on purpose, decides, because they've hacked a whole database of names and they know who didn't vote, and they say, these people are inactive, donate in their names. And then what? Are those people ever going to check? No. Is anyone going to know they're the people who don't vote? No. How do you do this? It's very, very difficult. It would be interesting, but illicit. I don't believe it's possible to do. If you were able to run every voter alongside who made donations, and then if you saw a large discrepancy in people who don't vote but make donations, you might be like, why aren't these people voting? If they're paying people, paying is a bigger deal than voting. You'd think they'd go vote. And then maybe you could ask them. I'd be willing to bet there's people you ask, hey, you're listed as having given $100. Did you? And they'll say, I don't know what you're talking about. Of course, that's just my speculation. I don't know for sure. Now, as it pertains to Actblue, I want to bring up some other really, really important points. I find this all rather strange. In this story from Just the News, they're one of the only outlets that bring up something interesting in this story about Black Lives Matter. They say donations to Black Lives Matter are funneled through a Democratic fundraising group. First and foremost, this group describes themselves kind of like PayPal or Stripe. It's like if you make a donation to me, like when I said on my donate page, you're just sending me money through PayPal. You're not giving PayPal money. I mean, technically you are, but the money is just into my account. There is a small fee that PayPal takes. Do you know why PayPal takes that fee? Because that's the fee to transfer the money. So first and foremost, they say this. The donation page linked from the central Black Lives Matter website actually reroutes users to secure Actblue donation form. Actblue Charities is a registered charitable organization formed to democratize charitable giving. On its website, Actblue says it takes a 3.95% processing fee from all transactions, after which the donated money goes straight to the candidate or organization. The company stipulates that any donations that are rejected by an organization or go unclaimed for more than 60 days will be redesignated as a contribution to Actblue. Those contributions are generally to support its social welfare activities, the organization states. There it is. Now, whether or not there's anything nefarious going on with these unemployed donations, I'm going to go ahead and say, dude, I just got to say it again. I'm really proud to say this because this happens to hit right in an industry that I worked in. I was a director doing events marketing and primarily canvassing, street canvassing, fundraising. We knew exactly who would and wouldn't give. And if you want to tell me that 50% of people are the 3 people we could barely get to give, I'm going to say liar. That's just me personally. All right. Now that's it. But I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying I'd be willing to bet you go to any one of my buddies and they'd be like, get out of here, dude. Retirees, unemployed, and homemakers, they're not going to give you money, man. You get lucky sometimes, but those are the groups you don't get. But take a look at this. When people say that donations to Black Lives Matter goes to the DNC, that's wrong. But what happens? First, any donation you make, 3.95% as a fee goes to Actblue. Yeah, they're taking a fee. What do they use that money for? Financial infrastructure for progressive groups. That is supporting Democratic politicians. You see how this works? I'm not here to claim that they're secretly funneling money to Democrats. No, the donations to Black Lives Matter are literally supporting the infrastructure of Democratic politicians. Now, of course, I'm sure all of the Black Lives Matter donors are okay with that. So I don't think it's that big of a deal, but it's something you should know about. More importantly, I want to show you this. As an aside, as we know, we're kind of winding things down. A federal agency said on July 17th, supporting Black Lives Matter isn't partisan or political. I would like to remind each and every person who has ever said that, from sports agencies to corporations, Black Lives Matter is not political. That's why they can wear their pins on their job, but you can't say MAGA. I'm sorry. Actblue is political. Actblue is overtly political, and your donations to Black Lives Matter go through Actblue. If they weren't political, why would they use the Democrats' fundraising apparatus? Because they are. So when you make these donations, what happens? The Democratic candidates that are running, that rely on Actblue infrastructure, are being benefited by donations to Black Lives Matter. The money you give to Black Lives Matter will very likely be transferred on along to at what 96.05% will go to Thousand Currents, a 501c3 who cannot give their money for political causes. It's a 501c3, and that's probably the excuse these people are using. But you see how the dirty game is played? That's right. Actblue is specifically for Democrats and progressives. The whole game is dirty, and that's all that matters, man. I don't know. I'm not surprised by any of this. Are we going to go as far as to say that it could be foreign contributors? It could be, but we're not going to go as far as to say that it is. But I do think everything we're seeing warrants an investigation. We saw it in 2008. I wonder what came of that. And now we're seeing it now. The political ties between Black Lives Matter and the Democrats should be obvious to anyone. And I'll tell you this, I've always been a big fan of this idea of getting money out of politics, but I don't know if you can do that. It just doesn't seem possible. The idea of getting money out of politics is basically like, yo, I don't like that you've got billionaires making massive donations to all these nonprofits that, you know, will like they're nonprofits, but they campaign, super PACs basically, right? Or advocacy groups. So a lot of people like to yell, George Soros, George Soros. And I'm like, I don't care. He's just one of the guys doing it. What about the Mercers? What about the Koch brothers? What about Mackenzie Bezos or whatever? She changed her name back. I don't know. What about people like that? All of these rich people are doing these things. Call them all out. How do we stop the incestuous relationship between these financial, groups and politics? I don't think you can. I don't think you can. They put limits on how much you can give to a candidate. What happens? People just make super PACs. Okay, well, we want to provide cheap and effective financial infrastructure at no cost to a political candidate. How do we do it? Actblue. We can take money for 501c3s and use that to siphon off a piece that will support the infrastructure used by the candidates. You know why? You're probably going to be able to raise money for a charity before a politician. And this is coming from experience. If I went to someone and said, yo, we want to save the trees, give me some money. People might be like, I like trees. Here's money. What if I said, John Smith needs $50. He's running for office. It'd be, I don't know. I don't care. Bye-bye. So it means it's harder to support the financial infrastructure off the fee going only to politicians. In my opinion, I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that political donations, while substantial, are nothing compared to charitable cause donations because those are tax deductible. Think about it that way. You might have a corporation saying, if we donate 10 million, we can write that off on our taxes. We can't do that if we give money to a political candidate. So we can donate money, write it off, and a large portion of that, or a decent enough, about 4%, will go to supporting financial infrastructure for Democrats, thus benefiting them. It's not the biggest scandal in the world in that regard. It's a bigger scandal that you have these unemployed people who apparently had $346 million to give to Democrats. Not to Republicans, though. Well, you know what? I'm going to wrap it up by saying this may actually be a big misunderstanding. It may just be that Democrats don't have jobs, and everybody with a job is supporting Trump. I mean, that's actually a good point. People like to make fun of these Black Lives Matter supporters and activists and people on the ground saying, get a job. Maybe those are the people making the donations, right? So it does seem weird. Maybe there's an explanation. In my experience, I'm calling shenanigans. But But what can I do? I'm just a dude. He's setting up a new studio in this. You may have noticed I'm in a different room. Yeah, we're setting up a new studio. I'm just a dude complaining on the internet about something I read. So I'll leave it there. But in all seriousness, I think dirty games, man. Dirty games. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. over at youtube.com. I'm sorry, youtube.com/TimCastNews. It is a different channel, and I will see you all then.